This is the new Half-Caff set, and as you can see, I have little imperfections here and there around everything. It doesn't matter. This is the first time, so, you know, we're just gonna deal with it. And there's my dog loudly drinking from their water bowl. But I got a coffee warmer. Look at that. If you've seen my video on Cosmo's Cosmic Adventure, you'll understand why so many people in the late 80s were drawn to the NES. And it's because games at this time were designed to teach the player as they played. You could just play the game, understand what you're doing. So in the late 80s we had games like Castlevania, Mega Man, Super Mario Bros. 3, games like these, but then Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was a strange game to come out during this time, specifically during this time because it did not teach the player whatsoever. This game came out and people had no idea, like, what is this? What am I doing? The things that you do in this game are like going from left to right, like any other game, but then sometimes you also go right to left. I don't know. There's 2 meters that you have. They rise and fall. You collect coins sometimes. Some people hurt you, but some people don't hurt you. It's really strange to figure out because, you know, again, the game was not designed to try to teach the player. The game ended up becoming infamous for how bad it was. Now, the game itself wasn't actually bad. When you don't understand a game, you're likely to stop wanting to play it and therefore just discount it as being a bad game. It's frustrating. Designing your game to teach the player is a delicate process. It can be done, but it's a form of nonverbal communication. And what that means is that, well, you try to talk to the player without actually saying anything. And the way you do this is through 2 steps. It's through setting expectations and giving feedback. As long as you keep those 2 steps in mind, you can create pretty much any experience that you want. You can make the player feel weak. You can make them feel helpless. You can make them feel very powerful. And you can also teach them how to play the game, but it requires a delicate balance. And if you're not careful about the kinds of choices that you make in your design, well, the game can feel not very good at all. Yooka Laylee was a game released in 2017 by Platonic Games. So Platonic was trying to make a spiritual successor to the game Banjo-Kazooie, which was released for the N64 in 1998. The reason why is because Banjo-Kazooie has had some weird history, but justice hasn't really been done to a sequel for that kind of game in a while. So in 2015, Platonic Games decided that, hey, we're gonna make one. 2 years later, released Yooka Laylee. There were fans out there, and they wanted this game to be made, but as soon as the game was released, it doesn't feel that good. It's not terrible. It got a lot of really mediocre reviews. It wasn't like a really bad game. It was just not that great. It was like a 7. The game was often criticized for being like rough around the edges and feeling really empty. So why did the game feel this way though? If you look at the game design, the game sets expectations and doesn't provide the proper feedback. Let's imagine that you made a game, and in this game you have a hallway where the player is at one end and there's a goal on the other end. It's a very simple thing. You put the player in the hallway and they understand where to go immediately, right? As soon as they're in the hallway, they say, oh, there's a goal, I'm gonna go straight, boom. It's a really simple idea, but what happens when we make the walls invisible? The goal is exactly the same. The game is exactly the same. Nothing has changed except the walls are now invisible. The material has changed. That's it. What we've done now is we've introduced extraneous information. That means that the player, while they're playing the game, their problem solving becomes a lot harder. They start formulating questions in their head that don't need to be formed. Things like, why is this wall blocking my path when the wall's not blocking their path? Again, it's the same hallway. They just need to go straight, but now they're trying to learn and it's not working very well. When a player is playing a game, they're using something called working memory. What working memory is a temporary holding spot for information that comes in, new information. So new information is coming in, your brain tries to connect those pieces of new information and then stores it for later use. So When you fill up that memory with extraneous information, or information that is just irrelevant, then your brain starts trying to connect pieces that it doesn't know are irrelevant. You start learning the wrong things, and you start formulating questions and theories and strategies around things that don't matter. When you introduce a lot of extraneous information, it becomes a lot harder to problem solve. And Yooka Laylee has a lot of examples of times where learning is hindered by extraneity. The point of Yooka Laylee is to collect pages, and you get these pages by completing challenges that you find in the world. So you go into a world, find a bunch of challenges, complete those challenges, and get rewarded with pages. And because the worlds are so big, it requires some exploration to try to figure out where all these challenges are. And once you've collected enough pages, then you have the option to expand the world into an even bigger world that has more challenges in it. In the first world, Tribal Stack Tropics, there is this kind of strange thing that they do to let you know about the expansion of the world. When you're in the world and you're exploring around, you eventually come to this part. This looks kind of strange. It looks like they forgot to put something here, like there was going to be a model, but then they just decided not to put it anywhere. Or this part where it looks like you're at the top of somewhere, but there's actually nowhere else to go. What these are boundaries. They're the boundaries of the level. And then once you expand the world, then those boundaries disappear. You're here when it's normal, and then when it's expanded, there's more stuff. In the second world, there is this large area, and in this large area, there's a large obstacle course. And once you get past the obstacle course, you come to this big lock on this giant door, which you presume there's a challenge inside. So you try to figure out how to get this lock unlocked. You know, you should be able to find some key somewhere, right? Well, there's actually no key. There's no way to unlock this door. The way you do unlock it is by expanding the level. Now, this wouldn't be an issue, except the expectation that they set in the first world was that you would get to this weird looking boundary place, and then when you expand the world, you have more world to explore after that. They didn't follow that same expectation though, so in the second level, once you expand the world, then these locks unlock. It would have been, nice to have something like that in the first level if you had some sort of lock in Tribal Stack Tropics to try to unlock, because then you would understand, I don't need to mess with that lock, I don't need to find an ice key, I don't even need to go through that obstacle course, because I know that that's going to be expanded later. Players will use time and energy trying to unlock this door when in reality they didn't need to whatsoever, but had they known that information prior, they wouldn't have wasted the energy. When the player discovers this lock, it's a problem that doesn't need to be solved. It's kind of like the invisible walls. You creating your own problems. You're saying, why is my path blocked? Your path isn't blocked. As you explore the worlds in Yooka Laylee, you eventually run into the incredibly creepy character Vendi. And what Vendi is she's a character that allows you to modify your gameplay style a little bit. She offers what are called tonics, which are like little power-ups basically. And you can go and talk to her to like switch your power-ups, which one you're using. What's kind of strange though, is in the second world, there's two Vendis. There's one here, and there's one in here. Now, why are there two? Well, I'm guessing that the second one maybe follows you, or maybe she has different tonics available or something. Well, no, actually, she's just the same person. She's a duplicate. But this only happens twice in the game. There's not duplicates of Vendi everywhere. So it seems really strange that you would have in the first world just one Vendi, and then in the second world you have two Vendis. You've now set up new information that doesn't mean anything. So when the player enters this little place and sees another Vendi there, the questions that pop up are, what is this character? Why is there two of them? Things like that start popping up in the player's mind, trying to figure out what the purpose of this new kind of information is. But there is none. There's no purpose for it. It seemed like the developers just wanted to create a convenient way for the player to switch tonics at whatever time they wanted. But it's like, if they wanted to do that from the get-go, why not just create a menu option as opposed to a character that you have to go to? You're introducing new information, again, new problems that need to be solved but are not actually problem. You can't just put these kinds of things for convenience anywhere in your game. You have to figure out, what is that actually going to do to the player's experience? In the first world, Tribal Stack Tropics. In the first world, there's all these plants with eyeballs everywhere. and you can talk to them. It makes it seem like you should be able to do something here, but when you go into this area, there's nothing to do. In fact, the plants even tell you they want nothing to do with you, which is a subtle hint that something else is supposed to happen. Well, as it turns out, you're supposed to transform into a plant and then come back and then interact with these plants again when you're transformed. This transformation into like a different object was also in Banjo-Kazooie. That's the reason why they have it in this. But in Banjo-Kazooie, whenever you transformed into another thing, what that did was it made you able to access other puzzles that you weren't able to access before. You could see little like windows, or you could see little holes, places that you weren't able to get to when you're Banjo-Kazooie. So it's really strange in Yooka Laylee that you can just access these puzzles anytime you want, and then it causes a bunch of confusion. It makes the player try to figure out, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? I don't get it. The transformations were always really interesting. In Banjo-Kazooie, you transformed using magic from Mumbo Jumbo. And in Yooka Laylee, you transform from like a mad scientist, Dr. Puzz. They're a lot of fun because you transform something analogous to the world around you. So like in Trouble Stack Tropics, you're a plant. In Glitter Glaze Glacier, you're a snowplow. And in the casino level, you're a helicopter. Okay, so the helicopter it's a bit strange to have it that way, but it's fun to play around with. You know, you can fly a bunch of places and you can shoot missiles and stuff. Whenever you transform and you're given new abilities, you use those abilities for different kinds of puzzles. So as a helicopter, you can fly and shoot missiles. So what are those used for? Are you supposed to go up to these chandeliers that are like really high up in the level? It makes sense because it's a really big level, so something must be hidden in the chandeliers up here, and well, no, I guess, well, nothing. There's nothing up here. Okay, well, I know that in casinos, like especially if this is a casino run by the bad guy, these big security cameras are everywhere, and they're like, you know, ominously looking over everything. So you shoot at them and, well, nothing happens. No, those are just decoration, actually. Okay, so maybe you fly through like this giant tunnel here to get something. Well, you can fly through the giant tunnel, but we're gonna come back to that. The only puzzles that require the helicopter's moves are to taxi some pigs around and use the missiles to blow up casino slots. It's super, super strange because the player is given these broad new abilities that you can use for a lot of different things, but then the puzzles that you use them for are super specific. What this does is it causes confusion because of the expectations that were set by the player before. Before, you were able to transform into different things, and whatever things that you transformed into, you use those powers to solve certain puzzles and whatnot. But this one is so specific, it makes you want to reach out for more. It makes you try to figure out, well, there's got to be something else that I can use this helicopter for. And, well, this thing happened to me. Let's go back to that tunnel. When I was the helicopter, I thought I had to fly through this tunnel. And when you fly through the tunnel, there's these quills, and you can pick up the quills. Now, it was a little strange because I thought the quills, you know, were too low to the ground for me to pick up as a helicopter. So I figured, well, I must be able to pick them up as, you know, Yooka Laylee, maybe some other time. But it's really easy to pick them up as a helicopter, so I'm just going to pick them up now. So I did that, you know, picked up a bunch. Now, fast forward later on in the level when I was missing a pagey, and I had no idea where this pagey was, and I went back to that tunnel, and I was like, oh right, I remember picking up all those quills as a helicopter. So I followed all these empty spaces that I remember picking up quills, and sure enough, it was leading me to a pagey. It turns out that those quills were specifically put there purposefully for signposting, for what game designers called signposting, which is to lead the player in a direction that you want them to go. But when you're a helicopter and you're drawn to these big things like this giant tunnel that you can go through, then you can break the signposting. I did. I just went over there and I just collected all the quills, and sure enough, it caused confusion later on. I had no idea what to do later on. What the developers created here was this open-ended, very broad ability of helicopter flying, and then this giant tunnel that looks like you're supposed to go through it as the helicopter, and turns out going through there actually breaks the game design. It's very, very strange. You would think that if you're not supposed to do that, why not just, I don't know, put a wall in front of the tunnel or make it inaccessible from the helicopter? Something very easy to do so that you don't have to cause this confusion with the player and break their expectations with the wrong feedback. Speaking of the helicopter, there's this really strange bit where you taxi a pig over to the vault, and he wants to like rob the vault or something. So you break into it for him by blowing up this wall. What makes this strange is the wall itself is cracked, so it looks like you're supposed to blow it up, which is great. That's kind of a video game trope. You know, you see cracked walls, it's supposed to be blown up or something like that. But that cracked texture is used for a lot of different things, and it's not always blowing up. For example, you have cracked glass, which you can't blow up. You're supposed to roll through that glass. You have the same exact cracked texture on ice, but you're supposed to melt the ice, not break it. It's so strange because these are video game tropes. In other words, they're expectations that have grown from other video games in the past, and they're using them, but they're using them in the wrong way. They give them the wrong kind of feedback. It's like, why even have the cracked texture there if you're not going to use it the way that previous games have used it? And I'm not saying that you have to follow a trope. If you're going to use it the way other video games have used it, why not use that with the other ones too? Why have this one melt? Why have this one being rolled through? Why not use some different kind of texture? Why do you have to make it cracked? It's so strange. That's so weird. When I came into this room here and I went to the top of the water started lowering immediately. So I was like, oh, I better try to get into one of these doors, but well, you can't. You can't get in there. When I was in this room, there was a skeleton propped up, so I figured, okay, well, I obviously gotta use the skeleton to jump over the wall, but, well, no, I guess I can't go that way. While I was exploring out in this area in the hub world, there's this large area over there that I must be able to see something over there, so I tried to fly over there and I can't. What? Turns out these aren't doors at all. They're holding places for invisible statues. It turns out you're not supposed to jump over the jail cell here. It's just there to let you know that there's something else there. Turns out that you can't go over there because there's an invisible ceiling blocking your path. I feel like the game does not take itself seriously as a 3D platformer. The game controls really well. It controls much better than Banjo-Kazooie ever did. But Banjo-Kazooie used these moves to try to get places, whereas this game, it's very forgiving. There's a lot of wide open spaces that you can just kind of go to. You don't really have to have any kind of precision when you're platforming here. And all of these wide areas give the player the desire to try to explore more. So these windows and these ceilings and these walls are placing contrivance on the player. It seems like the game wants the player to explore as much as they can, given this wide open atmosphere, but then they have these really contrived puzzles that feel super controlling. Why not just put a wall? Why not put a ceiling? Why not block these windows with bars or something? Why give information that's just unnecessary? The word Collect-a-thon has so much baggage. It was originally a genre that was started by Banjo-Kazooie and Super Mario 64. It wasn't until other developers started adopting this collecting technique that the word Collect-a-thon started becoming a description for tedium. If I had to describe why the criticism of collecting things was so negative, I think it's because a lot of players at the time were given an experience that they didn't expect. The games Super Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie had a game design that was designed around collecting things, so collecting the items felt natural. So in Banjo-Kazooie, whenever the player goes off way into the far reaches of a level and sees something valuable, they'll start expecting that from now on. And when it keeps happening over and over, it creates this loop of motivation where they continuously explore farther reaches of the level because they expect something of value to be there. Yooka Laylee does not really do this very well. Yooka Laylee has a lot less collectibles than Banjo-Kazooie. One of the collectibles that's the most present in the game are these quills, and there's about 200 of them in each level. But because the levels are so big, and because the quills are so spread out, it means that they're not in every crevice of the level. If the player goes off into the far reaches of a level, finds some quills, and then goes somewhere else into the far reaches to find more quills and they don't find them, well, it breaks the loop, and the motivation system is incomplete. That means the player doesn't know if it's worth it to go into the far reaches of a level all the time, which makes the quills a lot harder to find because you're not sure if you're going to find them here or there, and it makes the gameplay repetitive and kind of boring. The thing that would have fixed the sparseness of the level is if you had more collectibles, or if you had smaller levels, creating a dense, a more dense, a more rich experience for the player so that they were properly motivated to go and explore. Banjo-Kazooie has jiggies instead of pages for their collectibles. Sometimes they're just there in the level, and sometimes you have to complete some sort of challenge to try to get to it. But because Banjo-Kazooie has much smaller levels than Yooka Laylee, it feels like 10 is enough. When you collect items, you know where you've been and you know where you haven't been, so it's pretty easy to navigate the whole thing. In Yooka Laylee, you have 25 pages per world, which is good because the worlds are much bigger, so you need a lot more collectibles. But we have two versions of the world. We have the normal and the expanded. So the 25 pages are split up between the two. So the first time you enter the world, the normal version, there's around 10 to 15 pages. And some of those pages you can't get without moves that you learn from other worlds. So sometimes there's just 10 pages per world. So now we're back to the sparse, only 10 pages for this giant world problem. When you're constantly going back and forth from each world, your motivation is a lot less straightforward this way. A lot of times you don't know how to progress unless you just explore. So you end up exploring out of obligation. I'll repeat that. You explore out of obligation if you don't know how to progress. And when you're exploring out of obligation, that's not a fun thing to do. That's bleh. The levels end up feeling very vast and empty, and you end up feeling bored because of it. In Yooka Laylee, you have pages and quills, and then you have these other items that are just once per level. You have something like treasure, you have a power upgrade, you have a health upgrade, but that's kind of it. There's not a whole lot more to collect other than just the quills and the pages, and even then, there's not a whole lot of things that are sitting in the level for you to collect, so it's kind of just quills, I guess. In Banjo-Kazooie, there's a lot of things to collect. So there's jiggies, and then there's notes. Notes unlock doors, jiggies unlock levels. But then there's also things to top off your moveset. What your moveset is are like different moves that you have that are each powered by certain items that you pick up. So you can attack people with eggs, and you collect eggs to top off your supply. You can fly using red feathers, and you can shield yourself using gold feathers. So gold feathers, red feathers, and eggs are throughout the whole level, just sitting in places. And what this does is it complements your explorative habits. So as Banjo-Kazooie, you are exploring this 3D world because you have to see where everything is, but your constant forward motion is motivated by collecting all these items while you're moving forward. You're always doing something. It keeps up your momentum. And collecting these things also utilizes the 3D platforming mechanic, because that's what this game is, a 3D platformer. You're going to use the mechanic to try to get these things, so there's usually some sort of challenge involved in getting these objects. They're not just sitting out in the open waiting to be collected. You have to think about how to collect them. But hey, I mean, that's 90s stuff, right? Collecting things is stupid. So this is 2017 we're talking about. I mean, let's use a power meter, right? A power meter for when you're rolling, power for when you're flying, power for your shield, power for this, power for that, power for all your moves. In fact, all your moves use the power meter. Let's just do that. And then to refill the meter, let's stop. Just stop moving. Boom. Power meter refilled. This is by far the weirdest choice in this game because, even though you're making everything much, much more efficient, you are taking out the complete motive of going forward, of exploring the entire world. I mean, Banjo-Kazooie had eggs and feathers just kind of littered everywhere, and you would kind of know about where you went and where you didn't go based on what items you collected and which ones you didn't. And not only that, but it's interesting to get the items. It's not always necessary. It's just there for fun. I mean, it feels like a game. It feels like you're motivated to go forward, and Yooka Laylee just does not do that at all. Playtonic was so focused on just giving the player a non-monotonous feel, and I feel like their fear of the Collect-a-thon was so present in this game, and it really holds it back. It's really, ugh. As I said before, game design is very delicate. You can't just put in any kind of choices that you want, because you might be breaking the experience that you tried so hard to build up from the beginning. You have to be really careful with the kind of information that you present the player with, because their expectations might be shaped because of it. Just remember those 2 steps. Set an expectation, provide feedback. Because once you have those, you can create almost any experience you want to. I mean, some of the most powerful experiences in games that I know of are from that simple setup. And you can really have fun with those to create some really wild moments in games and really make your game unique and feel really interesting to play. If nothing else, those 2 steps will at least help you keep your intentions clear and make your game much more understandable, making your game a fun experience instead of a frustrating one. Unless you're trying to be frustrating, I guess.